So we'll probably open the Q&A now, to Jim or to myself if you have any question on the enterprise data center. I remind you, we have 2 mics, and if you can introduce yourself with your name and the company you work for before asking your question, that'd be very helpful. So we know you're shy. We're going to wait a couple of minutes.
Thanks. We'll do one from over here.
I think it may be better.
Oh yeah. Just a simple question. So you described this huge network.
Who are you?
Oh, sorry. James Buchanan from Adva. So you've got this great network problem, this great target market, the healthcare guys. You're going to take what they do, outsource it, do it better than sell it to the rest of the world. And open flow is your way to do it, right? What about the software on top? You kind of made reference to it, but didn't really make further mention of it. Are you pick stuff? You're going to use this API, that API, yada, yada?
Yada, yada. Yeah, good question. This industry is very new. So we're trying to find, we don't build switches. And we decided we're not going to build our own SDN platform. But we want to build new networks. So with respect to a couple of vendors, let's talk about that for a second. So with Juniper, we partnered with them because we got QFabric sitting here, and it's great, it's fast, and we want to extend it, but we need more control over it. So we're spending time in this partnership to get more control to do the kinds of things we want to do. And as we look at where the applications are going and how to redeploy them, we're going to know more about what's needed to have to have the control we need to manage that application. On the other side, Isabel's group, Big Switch, we've been working with them, and they got some really good engineers thinking about this problem, helping us with tweaking this way or that way. Great thinkers about where the market could go. It's weird. I'm in this multi-headed beast mode where I'm a vendor of the data center, and then I'm a vendor with the cloud services thing, and then I'm a provider of the healthcare IT thing, and I'm trying to lift that up and turn it over. So I just kind of put my hands up and say I can do a number of things, but not everything. And we certainly need these vendors to kind of step up, and they are, and to provide these layers for us. So you have all these. Providence has 1,100 applications that have to run. We have to go one by one, and their teams deployed doing that. We've got a heat map of how we attack the whole problem. We go for the hottest areas first, and then as we do that, we say, okay, we have to consider all these things. What kind of resources are we going to be on? How's the network going to work for this? And as we look at these networking considerations, how do we distribute it, right? And so that's when we start pushing the industry, and that's the part I'm most excited about. Is that okay? I got this problem. No one's ever solved this before. Who's going to do it? Okay, we got to start trailblazing. So Big Switch has been helping us. Juniper's been helping us, and I'm hoping to change the industry. Yeah.
Alec Rooney, I'm with Elbrus Networks. I have a question about the use case you described around protecting a computer within a healthcare environment. And I can understand how SDN can protect the network and the transport, but I'm not sure I understood how that would solve that use case you described of someone coming in and taking the computer and protecting the data on that computer.
Oh, great question. Because think of their system only working if the network works, or some functions only work if the network works. So in the world that we're in, there's a network there. I'm only alive here because my peripheral nervous system has allowed me to wave my hand back and forth. And so this network has to be here for me to do a demonstration. For healthcare to work effectively, we need to make sure that we have a quality of service to all these devices. Given the quality of service to these devices, and we have to do carrier-grade Metro Ethernet. We have to do all kinds of different layers and different types of things, MPLS and so forth. So as we're doing this with them, when it gets down to that one desktop that got pulled out of that hospital, how do you prevent that? The way you prevent that is you ensure that they provision every device onto the network. So when you provision on the network, we have protocols that say, here's how you provision. And it's not something where they're getting a bunch of disks out and they spend all day doing this and IT has to do this. No, it's something where they just log onto the network securely. And then we provision that. Once it's provisioned, whatever it is, let's say it's a desktop. If that desktop leaves, we'll know. We can turn off every port. We can turn off everything about that network. And there's some things that we're inventing on how to do that. But suffice it to say, if that thing is there, then, and it's not disrupting by encrypting the entire system, it's just going to turn everything off. And the things that are there when it leaves aren't going to be usable.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very first slide of this presentation, you said enterprise data center.
Yeah.
So do we see any difference between the enterprise data center and the carrier data center here?
And
the carrier data center?
well, that market's shifting. So forever, there's been a divide. And so don't worry your pretty little head, we'll do this stuff. And you guys don't worry your pretty little head, we'll do this stuff. We're saying, well, no. What's the best way to reduce the costs down to the customer? So we're negotiating, with carriers to bring service to our building, and then we want to be the optical cross-connect for that stuff. And where these carriers want to come in our building as an enterprise data center, they can do that. So there's wholesale and there's colo and all kinds of stuff in the data center business. We just want to provide all the services that are imaginable that make sense if we do that at scale.
Answer from a big switch network perspective. So there are a lot of use cases as the one Jim mentioned. We see also large companies with data center. You remember the slide that says fluctuation 19 times higher? They may want to have theirs, but they want to do some cloud bursting with partners as well, because they don't know if they'll be able to scale fast, especially if they don't have SDN technology and providers do have them. And this afternoon, we have another session led by Peter Cray about financials companies, big, banks and investment banking companies doing in-house this type of deployments too. At the moment, at least just from my personal experience at Big Switch, we see many large enterprise data center doing this, not yet smaller companies. So that's why when we talk, it looks like carriers, but it really depends on the model each enterprise wants to have in hybrid cloud, private or public, and what the weight of each one of them. But it's for a certain size of data center, though.
One last question. So how big is the problem of VM movement across the data centers? Is that for real, or it's kind of overblown right now, or?
Across data centers?
Yeah, over the WAN, or
right.
Like one VM sitting here in this data center, to manage the resources, you move it to the other data center.
Right.
Because the way I see it, like if I see that my data center is getting filled, I'll throw in more servers, because if not today, tomorrow I have to do that.
Yeah.
So how big is the problem of the VM movement?
The problem becomes big when you try to start addressing it. That's the problem. And we're trying to do this. The hardest thing to do is high availability, and it's so expensive to do that right. So we have to get smarter about how we break things into smaller units and move things quickly. And then you have to have, for us, we're putting dark fiber between our data centers and out to prem where we can to reduce the cost of that. But it is a hard problem. Like I said earlier, Gartner put it as at 8x times your original cost to get a high availability system going.
Sorry, I'll add to this. Jim is a visionary, and he's really passionate about this and looking at deploying it in a very comprehensive manner. There are other customers with smaller enterprises who are looking at deploying it at the moment, many in one data center before spreading it out. Let's face it, SDN is still an emerging industry, and the cross multiple data centers may be more of a challenge, but that's going to be, I'm sorry to refer to other sessions all the time, but that's going to be the topic of Rakesh and Amit, I don't know where they are, this afternoon, about large-scale global data center, where they will probably address multiple sites and multiple data centers as well.
One thing I want to add to that is that in an industry like healthcare, where we've got lots of hospitals we're talking to, they don't have large deployed data centers. But what they need is high availability and disaster recovery. So what they do is tap into our network to get to one of our facilities. And that's another way to manage that, is that it's not always like data center to data center that we're managing. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's going to be you've got some premise that needs replication across a network. And so we're working with ways to make that efficient.
Basically now then what you're saying is that the data centers are defined by the attributes that you have. For example, in the healthcare you said high availability. Maybe that is true for carrier also.
True.
So that's how we are maybe redefining the type of data centers.
Yeah. Agree.
Hi Jim, thank you very much for the great talk. I'm Amit Agarwal from Google. I had 2 questions for you. Firstly, what are we looking at in terms of scalability numbers? And secondly, what do you see as the topmost challenge for SDN since you're already experimenting with it?
Okay, you said you're from Google?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we don't do scale like Google does scale. But the interesting thing about Google is that it is high availability and scalable. And they're not even doing virtualization, of course, but they had two inventions. One was the PageRank, obviously, the algorithm got everything attracted to doing it right. And then they had that total distribution of data centers, the small data centers on the edge. So Google figured it out, obviously, and they're the king of high availability. When it comes to hospitals trying to do this, they're not Google. They don't have the funds of Google. And architecturally, we're not up to the speed of Google. We're trying to come up to speed to what Google's done. We look at what you've done, and we're, as a model, that's where we all need to go. Everything needs to run that way. There's many steps we have to take to get to where you are in terms of the overall. I'm just saying you representing all of Google. Maybe you don't, but what has been done is that's the epitome of scalability and high availability. The way you've done networking, the way you've done data centers, the way you've done power, all this stuff. When we get into enterprises, they don't have that luxury. And so what we try to do is get in the middle there and say, okay, what can we do for you? We can put you in a place that has low power. You got the Dallas thing going over with Google. That's a great data center there. We've learned things from each other. We need to break the problem down. And then, as you would agree, I'm sure, that this thing is ultimately distributed. Right? And that's what Google's done, is that they've done the innovation around the data center, small, distributed, at full distribution at the edge. All of our applications have to get toward that. The question is, how do we deliver it? How's that done? How's this hospital do that? How do these other businesses do that? We can't go public and get a war chest to go and invent. So we have to have what the community can deliver and then figure out how to do that economically. So we decided with healthcare that we're going to try to do what Google did in a small way. To say, take pieces of this thing, figure out how to make it high availability, figure out how disaster recovery work, and then reduce the cost so that other people don't have to go invest in all that. We're investing in data centers, just like you have, and then we're investing in the technologies to allow our customers to utilize those best. That may have answered one part of the question. What was the second part?
So what do you see as a top challenge for SDN since you guys are in the frontiers of experimenting with it?
Well, it would be nice if it were everywhere now. It would be nice if all the vendors had it built in. It would be nice if there was agreement on the standard. And it would be nice if we had really nice tools to work with that. The thing about technology in the last, 30, 40 years I've been working in it is that the tools got better and better and better and better and better and better. Google is basically a tool, for building things. In biology, we don't have debuggers, right? You can't trace route, hormones. You can't do that kind of stuff over the network. But in technology, we can build tools. So like Isabel's company and Assyria and all the other ones out there participating, they need to start building tools for us so that we can start doing this. And once we start building tools that can control things better, then we're going to see how we tie that to applications better. But right now, it's kind of, you have to come to a conference like this and say, what is this SDN stuff? Or read a white paper, and it's just not out there. And the vendors really aren't pushing it that much yet because it's new. It's an enabler for the change, but it's not the disruptor. Disruptor is these new networks, and I can't wait till tool companies build the tools so we can go build these new networks. Then it gets exciting.
Thank you.
Any other question, anyone?
Yeah, one right here. Actually, Isabel, it's for you as well. A couple questions. Jim, you talked a little bit about your work with Craig. Was this just out of curiosity? Because as far as what he's doing, the BioLinux cloud is strictly hosted on Amazon right now. There are APIs that Eucalyptus actually franchises. But what Amazon actually abstracts out is what SDN's promise is when you bring it in-house or in research centers.
Right.
So could you touch a little bit on that? And as well, you mentioned something about applications are being built already that interface with SDN space, and you promised a few examples. And I didn't hear of any. Thanks.
I'll let you
go first. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you asked me if it was just out of curiosity with Craig.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's
not in the life science field, but I work very closely with them.
Okay, so there's an international symposium of the biome yesterday in Seattle, and I went to that and spoke with Lee Hood and Craig Venter, because they're the leaders. Lee Hood invented the automated gene sequencer, and Craig Venter, well, you know, he's changed all of our thinking in terms of biology. The questions I have were with him about this biome and how he's managing this stuff and how he's making modifications inside the biome, not on the instructional level, but on the gene level. He's rearranging components, not programming it. Trust me, there's no one doing programming in biology. But he's doing all these components. So we're working with him on the camera project, which is about the biome and the Amazon River Basin. So we've got a large cloud churning through algorithms trying to help him out with his progress. And so we're going to work more closely with him. He asked me to come down to his lab, talk about the theoretical biology, but also talk about how where the cloud's going, and some things I want to do with them to say, look, let's get this network, this next generation network, out to where the sequences are, where all this work is going on. I mean, we now have 100 million genes that have been recorded now, and it's growing faster and faster and faster. If you just collect the air here and look at the biome or the microbes that are in this air, we'll find things that we've never seen before. That's because this is how new it is. We probably have 100 million species on the planet. We have 100 million genes that we've found. And so if you look at life sciences and where that's going, it's exploding. Inventors took his ship around the world and grabbed this whole biome thing. And the more data that's coming out of that, the more cloud technology we need, the more network technology we're going to need, the more distribution we're going to need. And then as that applies to healthcare, then things get very, very interesting.
So I'll address the question about the applications that you just mentioned. So I did a quick list, and I apologize, they're going to be very big switch focus, because I'm aware of the application in our ecosystem of partners, and I'm sure there are plenty more out there, and you probably find more here. So first, the type of application, as what Jim mentioned, you need tools to manage a network. And to manage an SDN network, it's different than managing a traditional networks. So Big Switch, for instance, builds those type of tools, and this is more SDN network management and visibility type of tools. That's one, very SDN specific. Now you've got applications that are more network services specific, and I mentioned vArmor. It's a startup that actually showcasing at the exhibition hall of the ONS. So you'll be able to go there and have a look. They're doing firewall, deep packet inspection, security application, and they made them SDN capable. And by this I mean, if you find malicious traffic and you flag it, in the past you need the network manager to look at it and decide what's the course of action. What they are doing, they are making, and hopefully they will explain it better than I, they can create automated rules. As a network manager, you can decide, if I find this traffic, I want to isolate this server, and all the traffic from this server will be segregated into a network segment I'm going to softwarely create, and the forwarding plane is going to change accordingly. So they're doing kind of the traditional security feature, but then instead of a one-way, it becomes a two-way interaction in a dynamic manner. And there is another demo you're going to see at the ONS on the exhibition booth with Dell, using the Big Switch Networks technology as well, where they're using the AIM application they have for orchestration, as well as OpenStack. And here is more on top of this, coordinating compute, storage, and network resources in a dynamic manner, where the network this time is a software-defined network. So that's the three examples I can give you that you'll be able to see actually here. Any other questions? Because lunch is probably waiting for you. So please join me in giving another round of applause to all the speakers this morning. Thank you, Jim.